Hi, this is Anil and welcome to the video tutorial for the learning line on C++ programming. So in this tutorial we're going to learn about the polymorphism in C++. The word polymorphism means having many forms. Typically polymorphism occurs when there is a hierarchy of classes and they are related by inheritance. So C++ polymorphism means that a call to a member function will cause a different function to be executed depending on the type of object that invokes the function. So if it is confusing, don't worry, when we see the example it's going to be clear. So here for the demonstration purpose I have the code from the previous tutorial, where we have a base class called person and we have a method called introduce, and in that method we're just gonna say hey from person, and this method is having the public scope. And also we have another class called student, and which is inheriting from this class person, and we have overridden that method in this derived class student. And also we have a function which is going to take a parameter of type person, the base class here in this example, and it's just going to call the introduce method. So here, just for the demonstration purpose, I'm going to create another class. So it's going to be class, and let's call it as farmer. And a farmer is also a person, so it's going to inherit from this base class person, so it's going to be public inheritance and it's going to be person. Alright, now here also we're gonna override the introduce method. So I'm gonna copy the code from this student class and paste it in the farmer class, and I'm gonna change this one to hey from farmer. Alright, now when we create an object in our main by using this class farmer or the class student, let's say farmer and let's say Anil, and then we're gonna have an object of this class student, so it's going to be student and let's say Alex. Alright, now we have two objects, one is of class farmer, another one is from the class student. So if we call this who's this function and pass this objects to it, let's say who's this and Anil, and if I save this and run this program, okay, we have an error. Okay, that's because it's capital person P, so I'm just gonna correct that and I'm gonna build and run this again. Now you guys can see it says hey from person. That's because in this function we are referring to that object passed using a type of the base class. That's why the method in the base class is called. So this introduce method from the base class is called, and that's why we get hey from person. And similarly, if we pass this Alex here, we'll get the same result, or the method from the base class will be called. That's not what we want. What we want is when we pass Anil or the object of this class farmer to this method who's this, it should produce or it should call the introduce method from this class farmer. And when we pass the object from this class student, it should call the method from this class student. So now in order to make this function to work in different forms, we can use the virtual functions. So virtual functions are nothing but the functions in a base class that is declared using the keyword virtual. Defining in a base class a virtual function with another version in a derived class signals to the compiler that we don't want static linkage for this function, or when we pass an object of the derived class, I don't want you to call the method in the base class if that method is overridden in the derived class. So here what we're gonna do is we're gonna have the virtual functions. So here in this base class we're gonna make this introduce method as a virtual method. To do that we need to use the keyword virtual. So it's going to be virtual void introduce. Now when we run this program and when we pass this object of this class farmer to this who's this method, which is taking the parameter of type person, at that time when it calls this introduce method, the compiler will come to know that okay, I have a virtual method here. That's why if this derived class or the object which belongs to a class has overridden the method introduced, then I should call that overridden method. That's why here this statement is going to call the introduce method from this former. So just to demonstrate that, I'm going to save this, I'm going to build and run this program, and now we get hey from former. So now this function works in different forms. When we pass an object of type former, it's going to call the function from the former. When we pass an object of type student, it's going to call the method from this class student. So just to demonstrate that, I'm going to call it again. So it's going to be who's this, and again it's going to be Alex, an object from the class student. Now if I build and run this program, it says hey from former, hey from student. So now let's say if this former class has not overridden this introduce method, at that time this who's this function is going to call the base class method. Just to demonstrate that, I'm going to remove the method here from the former class. I'm going to save this, I'm going to build and run this program, and this time you'll get hey from person and hey from student. That's because this former class has not overridden any method from the base class, and since this introduce method is not present in the derived class, the method in the base class is called, and that's why we get hey from person. And then the student class has overridden the base class method, and that's why it calls the method in the derived class. A polymorphism means that many forms, and it occurs when there is a hierarchy of classes and they are related by the inheritance. So in C++, polymorphism means that a call to a member function will cause a different function to be executed depending on the type of object that invokes the function. Here, depending on the object passed to this who's this function, it's gonna call the different method. So this who's this function is a perfect example for polymorphism in C++. So thank you for watching, guys. Don't forget to subscribe and like my Facebook page, and stay updated with the latest tutorials that I'm gonna make, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.